Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Finding It with Father podcast. I'm Father Jose Alvarez, your host, and I'm delighted to welcome those of you who joined us for our first episode last week. We got a lot of great feedback about that episode. I'm glad that so many of you enjoyed it and thought it was beneficial. And we certainly welcome those of you who are joining us for the first time, whether you are from Epiphany, the Epiphany Catholic Church and School community, or from anywhere. You're welcome to be with us and journey with us. This podcast is intended to help anyone and everyone find it, to find life, to find the presence of God in everything and anything. And that is what we try to do here, to help you find that presence of God in the important responsibilities and the things that may seem trivial and the tough challenges that we face and the pleasantries that we delight in, the small pastimes, whatever the case may be. God is always there. As we said last week, the spiritual life is about a lot more than we think it is. We often equate it with just going to church or praying or doing works of charity, and those are essentials, of course, but it's a lot more than that. It's everything we do, from frying an egg to praying the rosary, whatever. God is always there. God doesn't leave us at any moment, and He's always there, trying to reach out to us. He's always there trying to teach us something, trying to guide us, trying to inspire us, trying to enrich us. Which brings me to the topic of today's episode. Who is the richest person that I have met here at Epiphany? As I mentioned last time, I've been here about 5.5 years, and a question like that is going to make you think about a few things, probably. You might be thinking, well, who might be the person that Father is thinking of? And you might yourself start to think of, well, who's the richest person that I've met here? And, I have to say, we are a community that has resources. There are many very good and very capable people here in this community who have been blessed with a lot of talents and a lot of resources. So you might be running through some names and faces in your mind, and you're probably saying, well, I'll get a good night's sleep because I know that he's not going to talk about me, and I'm not going to talk about myself either as being the richest person here, because I'm not. But I am going to reveal that right now, and I'm going to put up a picture of who that person is. And the richest person that I've met thus far at Epiphany is this person that you are seeing on your screen. And as you look at this person, you might be saying, who is that guy? I've never seen that man here at Epiphany. And, you might be thinking, well, maybe he's got nothing to do with Epiphany. But I would say not so fast, my friends, because there is a sector of our community that knows who this man is. And those are the people that work at our school. Anyone who is linked to our school community, our faculty, our administration, our staff, the kids at school, they can all identify this man. In fact, if you're watching this episode and one of your kids who comes to Epiphany School is watching, probably he or she has already said, oh, it's so-and-so and so. And if they're not watching and they're around, call them over and ask them, who is this fellow? And they're probably going to tell you right away who he is. And The man's name is Roberto Barba. Roberto Barba was one of our cafeteria employees. He technically wasn't an employee of our school. He is an employee of the company that does the food services for Epiphany, a wonderful company. And Roberto worked in the cafeteria for, I would say, a couple of years. And I speak in the past tense because he's no longer with the company. He's no longer with the company, not because he's no longer is employed by the company per se, but I speak of him in the past simply because he's no longer with us here in this existence. Roberto sadly passed away earlier this year. And let me tell you a little bit about Roberto. He died of complications from ALS, better known as Lou Gehrig's disease, a terrible, degenerative disease that afflicts the neurological system and really robs people of their voluntary movements. And Roberto certainly was battling this disease for quite a while, and you could see that as he spent time with us. But a lovely, wonderful guy, and what Roberto did in the cafeteria was that he had a unique job. He was in charge of the trash. He was in charge of picking up, cleaning up the trash. Just think about this. Okay, we got about 900 and somewhat kids that go through that cafeteria every day. And when you've got 900 and somewhat kids in there, it's gonna get messy. Trust me, every now and then I, love going in there and just chatting with the kids and playing with them and whatnot. And boy, oh boy, especially the real little ones, they eat in very unique ways. Some eat in more conventional ways than others. I've seen kids eat at all kinds of angles and chew food and stick food and wherever. They aim at the mouth, but sometimes it doesn't reach the mouth. Sometimes it winds up on the floor, here, there, and everywhere. And, this is what Roberto did. Roberto had to clean up all this stuff. Now, he didn't do that alone. There were other employees that helped him to pick up, and wipe tables and the floors around the tables and all that. But Roberto was single-handedly in charge of the trash bins. You can imagine 900 kids that you're servicing and faculty. There's a huge fixture in our cafeteria on the way out where there are all these, like eight trash bin receptacles, etc. And Roberto was, emptying the bags constantly and putting in new bags and whatnot. Tough job. Not the most pleasant of jobs. However, Roberto always did this with a great smile on his face. Now, my guess is that Roberto probably didn't know a whole lot of English, if any at all. He was, because of his condition, he was difficult to understand, but he had a delightful sense of humor. I was always messing with him, and he loved every bit of it, and he was always messing with me. He would say stuff to me that I would barely understand, but I could tell that he was, just giving it to me. And really, really lovely person. We could see him deteriorating clearly, and around the month of January, late December, January, you could see that, in fact, he practically couldn't continue to do that anymore. His breathing was labored. His speech was far more impaired. And, to the point that one day he just wasn't there. We found out that he had to be hospitalized. His family obviously knew that he was sick, but he apparently didn't want to reveal more than he needed to the family. Some of his fellow workmates who worked for the company, the cafeteria company, mentioned to him, like, Roberto, you need to take care of yourself. And he would always say, well, I need to support my family. I don't want them worrying about me, etc. And, well, the news came that obviously he had to be hospitalized and that he was terminal, that he was about to die, that he was transferred to a hospice facility. And, I clearly thought it my duty and my desire as well to go visit him before he would move on to eternity. And finally got around to that one afternoon, and I went to see him at the facility where he was at, which is a very, very good facility. Believe me, I've been there many times before to visit patients. And when I got there, Roberto was there with his wife, a lovely lady. Roberto, by the way, was only 60 years old. That's, rather young for today's day and age. But when I got there and I entered the room, I knocked on the door and I heard the command to come in. I went inside. Roberto, who was laying in bed, practically leaped out of bed to the point that the wife had to restrain him, tell him, you can't get out, lay down. And he was he had an ear-to-ear grin. And I thought to myself, oh, he's not going to die on me, clearly, because he has too much energy to die right now. But he was very happy to see me. And he started trying to say something to me that I couldn't understand at all. I said to him, hey, I don't speak your language. So I noticed he had a notebook there with him. I told him, I said, write down what you're trying to tell me, because otherwise I can't understand you. And so he wrote, thank you for coming to visit me. I'm so happy that you came. And I told him that I was clearly very glad to come and that I had heard that he had gotten very, very sick. And I told him, I don't know why you kept working for so long if you were that sick. And then he started again trying to say something to me. And I said, hey, write it down. And, he went back to the notepad and he wrote, well, I worked because I wanted to support my family. And I also didn't want them. I tried to work as much as I could so they wouldn't be more worried about me being sick at home than I wanted them to. And then I asked him, I said to him, well, tell me this, are you in pain right now? And his answer really floored me. He wrote, I didn't have to tell him to write the response down. He automatically did it. You know what he wrote when I asked him if he was in pain? What he actually wrote was, that's not very important. What's important is to help your neighbor. This guy was putting my Christianity to shame. By the way, he wasn't even a Catholic. He was, as I understood it, he was a Christian. I don't know if he was a born-again Christian or he belonged to some Protestant church, but, when he wrote that, and then his wife added, and by the way, the entire conversation and everything he wrote was, took place in Spanish, obviously. But the wife said, oh, Roberto, he's a very, very loving man. He's always been a very, very loving man. She said, he would tell me how much he loved the kids at school, how happy they made him. And he loves you a lot, Father. He said that he said that you were a very funny guy, and that he really enjoyed joking with you, and that you were a good guy. And, I said something to her. I said something to her to the effect of, geez, don't hold it against them. Nobody's perfect. But then, then she said, but Father, let me tell you, you know who he loves more than anyone and anything? And she said, it's Jesus. He absolutely loves Jesus. And he had this big grin on his face. And then she said to him, she said, Papi, that's how she referred to him. She said, Papi, show Father what you're going to do when you see Jesus soon. And this blew me away. He looked at me and he went like this. 22 years as a priest, I've never run into anyone so happy approaching death. This guy was, so focused, so, hopeful, so expectant, so wanting to see Jesus that it almost looked like he was telling me the minute I see him, I'm going to jump in his arms. What a guy. What a guy, and what an experience. I went there that day as a priest, hoping to help him, hoping to minister to him, to the family, whoever may have been there. And I can tell you that he ministered to me a lot more than I could ever minister to him. He enriched me and filled me more with life than I could ever fill him with life. And I told him that obviously I would continue praying for him. And then I said a little prayer with him and the wife, and I said my goodbyes and wished him well. Interestingly enough, he passed away about, I would say, a week and a half thereafter. Very ironically, he died on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Very, very apt. And, you think about this man, and if you knew this man, there's the perfect example of finding it. If anybody found it, it was that guy. If you are looking forward to seeing Jesus that much as death is approaching, if you're so full of joy, if you're so full of life in the midst of trash, in the midst of a horrible condition that makes you deteriorate, if you're that full of vigor as death is approaching, you've found it. You have found the presence of God, and God has filled you with life and continues to fill you with life and make that life gush over. It was so evident if you knew this man. You see, this is why Roberto Barba, I would say, is the richest person that I've met here at Epiphany. For you see, the richest person is not necessarily the one with the most money or the most resources or the most successful resume. Not that any of those things are bad, but the richest person is the one with the most peace, the most joy, the most connection, the most intimacy with Jesus, with God. That's what it really means to find it. So I'm blessed to have known Roberto, as is anyone, certainly his workmates, and those of us who knew him and interacted with him at school, certainly, across the board, feel that way. And more than likely, you're also blessed to hear about him and what he carried on with him and what I'm sure he's carrying on within him in eternity. I continue to pray for his eternal rest, and I ask him to pray for me, because I can tell you, I say this often, the good thing about life upstairs is there's no unemployment up there. People up there are very connected to us down here. So that is the topic of today's episode. The richest person that I've met here at Epiphany. And before I tell you about the next episode and where it is that I am going to take you on the next episode, and I'm going to take you to a very, very special and unique place, I want to tell you about how much our sponsors really are a blessing to us, how much they enrich us. Our sponsors, we're very grateful to them, the sponsors that we currently have. We're grateful for their support, their generosity, and we're welcoming anyone else who wants to sponsor our podcast. We have a variety of sponsorship packages available. If you want to sponsor an episode or a couple of episodes or 4 episodes, or if you want to be one of our elite sponsors, all you need to do is to contact Denise Roca at the information, at the email address, at the number that you see on your screen, and she will take care of you. And again, I thank those of you who have already sponsored us, and those of you who have shown interest in sponsoring us. We got quite a few calls since the last podcast. So we're very grateful to you for that. And again, all of the proceeds from our sponsorship go to enhance our reserves so that we can continue making the renovations, the repairs, the innovations, the new creations that will continue to build up life here at Epiphany Church and School. So our next episode, I'm going to have someone here on the podcast who has been to where we all want to go, to heaven. Someone who actually went up there and obviously didn't stay, came back to talk about it. And this person is going to give us his or her account of what they encountered, what they experienced. Obviously, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Years ago, before I became a priest, I was a teacher. I was an educator for a long time, and I taught at a parochial school here in the Archdiocese, and I taught religion to middle school kids at the time. And in my classroom, I had a little bumper sticker or a sticker above one of the doors that said, "Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to buy a ticket." Well, guess what? Next podcast, I'm going to give you a free ticket to get a sneak preview of heaven. So make sure that you join us, hit the subscribe button so that you can be alerted about our podcast. We're delighted that you're with us. Thank you for joining us. And in the meantime, as we continue to journey here on earth, keep trying to find it. Keep trying to find life. Keep trying to find God, because he's there in everything, all the time, anywhere. And we'll catch you next time.